Cory Lavalette from The Athletic and North State Journal, probably operating on similar lack of sleep as we are here. He was at Lenovo Center until the wee hours. Sir, appreciate your time. Let's start with the biggest picture. How do you view what transpired this season?
It was kind of a weird year. I didn't feel like it was maybe as cohesive as the last couple seasons. There were more ups and downs, I would say. I guess that comes with the transition they had this year, the turnover of players, the new additions. But at the end of the day, you reach the conference finals. You obviously want to do more than that if you're the Hurricanes, but you can't say this is a failure of a season, because I think, and Rod alluded to it last night, the expectations weren't as high this year as they have been. And they, even if they didn't get further than they have, they did exceed them, I think. Especially going through everything they went through with the Mikko Rantanen stuff and all that.
We went from, at the beginning of the year, Cory Lavalette is joining us at Cory Lav on Twitter. At the beginning of the year, we all understood this was going to be a transition year of considering the players that walked out the door. And we don't even have to talk about the forwards that walked out the door. When you lose one of the top shutdown defensive pairs in the entire NHL, not to mention two of the best penalty killers in the NHL, in Brady Shea and Brett Pesce, and they leave, and it's understandable. You couldn't keep everybody. And the Hurricanes kept what they could, and they knew that they were going to be in transition. They tried to bring some rookies in. So we went into the season, it wasn't going to be as great, and all of a sudden, Martin Necas touched the sun for the first 6 weeks of the season. Carolina got off to a really good start, which was kind of fool's gold because Necas was basically masking some of the problems that we knew that they had. Freddie Anderson, obviously, out again. But the goaltending was mediocre. Is that fair to say for the 3 months that Freddie was out? Piotr, was okay, but sometimes not. Then, of course, it was Spencer Martin and Dustin Tokarski for a while. The two games that we played against Florida around Thanksgiving, after Thanksgiving, were both started by Spencer Martin. He started a back-to-back against the defending Stanley Cup champions. I don't think anybody had on their bingo card that Spencer Martin would play either of those games, let alone both. And then they make the trade for Rantanen. And out of nowhere, Carolina's thrust into an area where maybe they shouldn't have been. I don't know. And then everything that transpires after that. So I guess to your point, it really was a weird year. Where did this team ultimately fail? I'll just use that term, even though I don't think this year is a failure. Where did this team ultimately fall short?
Yeah, I mean, they met a team that plays the way they play, that does it better.
Wait a second. I was told that the Hurricanes system, Rod's system, can't win, Cory.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Sorry to derail that. Continue your answer.
Between that and Jeff Daniels running the power play, we've got some good narratives going on. Yeah, I mean, they ran into a team that is, really a juggernaut. Like, you look at what Florida has, they basically have what the Hurricanes have, except you stack two superstars on the top of their lineup. Matthew Tkachuk, even at 70%, which I think is probably where he's at right now, is a game changer at all times, in many ways. And Barkov is essentially Sebastian Aho, but 4 inches taller and 30 pounds bigger.
Yeah.
And, Sebastian Aho can't make that play that Barkov makes in the corner on Dmitry Orlov. He can't power his way to the net in that way, with the finesse that he still has, the skill that he has. So you're missing a superstar player. They tried to get one.
Right.
Superstars aren't infallible. We're seeing that right now with Dallas. I mean, Rantanen was the early Conn Smythe favorite, and now he hasn't scored in 7
No,
games.
right.
And this stuff happens. Hockey's a fickle game. What happened in games 1 and 2 wasn't fickle. It was a team that looked overwhelmed. But they've managed to find some footing. Obviously, the game 3 meltdown, not great. The second period meltdown last night, just 4.5 minutes of
Yep.
it. They bounce back from that, but it's a blow to your psyche, right? It's a when you think you can't make a mistake, you're playing in a way to not make a
Correct.
mistake, and that's tough. And you don't have guys that necessarily erase or make up for a ton of mistakes that you make, with the exception of Jacob Slavin, who corrects many mistakes. Although I will say Brent Burns cleaned up one of his last night early in the game. So
Look, I thought there were times this year where Brent Burns looked like it was done. It was over. I thought he had a pretty good playoffs for a 40-year-old guy who probably logged too many minutes during the course of the season. But he was logging more minutes in the playoffs, and I actually think his game was good. It was unfortunate that Dmitry Orlov, I don't think every game was bad for Orlov. I actually thought game 4 was good for Orlov. But boy, game 3 was bad, and game 5 wasn't good either. But he's also not alone. He had a lot of company, I think, in some bad moments. Cory Lavalette, an area where Carolina has to get better next year.
I mean, I think they need to address the center position. I've been a believer in Jesperi Kotkaniemi, and he continues to prove me wrong. The penalty last night probably didn't get talked about enough. But that's
depends on what you were listening to.
Depends. Really tough call.
It wasn't a great call, but he put himself in position to have the call.
Yeah.
Right?
I didn't mean call. A tough play to make at that juncture. Coming off of a failed power play, and you take a bad offensive zone penalty. It's not great. You need to, right now you've got 3 guys who are third or fourth line centers, and you don't have a second line center. Or you could even argue you have a second line center, but you don't have a big time first line center.
Right.
So I think you want to address that. I don't know that you necessarily have to address it with a center, and I thought at the beginning of the year Seth Jarvis might get a look there. That never happened. Part of me wonders if that's the shoulder stuff. We'll find out more tomorrow at closeout day that, I'm sure he's been playing with a bad shoulder again.
All year.
Yeah. I mean, he's had his little flak jacket on not the whole season, but pretty much. He took a hit in practice from Will Carrier, and after that, I didn't see him not have it on. Not to say Will Carrier is the one who hurt it, but I think that's just an ongoing problem, and he probably needs shoulder surgery, and I wonder if it'll happen this summer, because I guarantee you he wants a shot to play in the Olympics.
Right. I asked him once, will you have shoulder surgery at some point? And he goes, if I ever want to throw a ball again, I need to.
Yeah. So the fact that he played the way he played this year, again, for the second straight year, as still a kid in this league, playing with one arm, essentially, I wonder, that doesn't make you very big down the middle, but I do wonder if it's possible to put him there, especially if you go and do something big on the wings. Mitch Marner's name keeps coming up. You've got Bradley Nadeau coming. You think he's a goal scorer. Could you sacrifice? And I thought Andrei Svechnikov, for his faults in this series, I thought he took a big step forward these playoffs. And I thought he was... Jarvis gets the tying goal, but to me, Svechnikov was the guy in the third period who was trying to will the team to tie the game, and he had a part in that too. But I thought he was really, really good in the third period, and I think you hope that he's taken a step and he's ready to be a 90-point player.
He needs, well, I don't know about 90 points, but he's got to be close to 80, right? He's really never been that. And what I liked Andre in the playoffs. I thought we saw a different Andre Svechnikov in the playoffs. That Andre we could take going forward. And maybe he's not your best scorer, but he is one of those guys who can be a scorer, can also be a bit of an agitator. I like that. Yeah, I don't know about Seth in the middle. I do agree with you. And first of all, you know me, you and I are on opposite ends of the Jesperi Kotkaniemi scale. And I thought that there were times this year where, man, he's playing well. That's the guy that they could use. And I just thought, and I couldn't blame him entirely for the 4 minutes and 36 second span of the second period, but it was the start of it. Just taking the penalty alone was the start of it. But I can't blame him. I can't blame him for the power play goal. Right? There were mistakes made on that sequence that allowed Matthias Ekholm to have, not Matthias Ekholm, it just made him a different player. Aaron Ekblad to have the shot. I can't blame him for Jordan Martinook helping out where he didn't need to help out and leaving Evan Rodriguez to go right down the middle. And I can't blame him for Sebastian Aho losing the faceoff and then losing the battle at the front of the net, although it was at the end of a very long shift after an icing, and Seabass was clearly gassed as a result of all of that.
He also got clipped by, in watching the replay, Burns clips his leg.
Yeah. He was impeded on the way through. No doubt about
it. Tough play.
Yeah, it was
I agree.
Tough all around. So I don't blame Jesperi for all that. But it was an ill-advised decision that he made in the moment that ultimately led to it. And I think we all agree that the head coach has less patience with him than he has with basically any other player. And I understand there are people who feel like KK gets treated differently. He might. But I think the head coach has been mostly fair. He gets a lot of opportunity with all of everything that's gone on. Do they have to move him? We'll close on this. Do they have to move Kotkaniemi?
His number's not so bad, so I mean, you can make an argument both ways that he's useful if you keep him, and if you trade him, he's not like a boat anchor contract that somebody, teams are going to look at somebody like Pierre-Luc Dubois and say, man, that was a terrible contract that he signed with LA, and look what he did in a new environment. And there might be a team that thinks that for under $5 million, we have the chance to get a 2 or 3C at a discount. The thing that jumps out to me, though, is like you don't really need the cap space. Like they've got almost $29 million. Like unless they find a position for me and you,
I can't skate, Corey.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. They just need to get to the ceiling so nobody can say that Tom Dundon is cheap. Right?
That is true. Yes, they need to get to the floor. They're about 7 million from 6 million, 7 million from the floor right now.
No, I'm saying they have to get to the ceiling so that Tom Dundon doesn't have the cheap,
that's right.
cheap owner narrative.
Totally understand.
So, I mean, it might be something you have to do. I think you're right that Rod loses patience with him. He sees so much potential there, and it just either it doesn't come through physically, and then sometimes it doesn't come through mentally. He's not, he's still prone to bad mistakes and. But
so is Andre.
I don't think. Yeah, but I thought in the playoffs he was much better.
I loved Andre in the playoffs. Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't want to hang this season on Jesperi Kotkaniemi. I mean, you need more scoring up and down the lineup. You'd think Jackson Blake takes a step forward. You're probably going to have Bradley Nadeau next year. You see what he can bring, particularly on the power play. I think he's a weapon. Encouraging stuff from Alexander Nikishin. I think you've got a top 4 defenseman next year in him.
That's what Tim Gleason said.
Scott Morrow, I think it has a lot of potential. The other thing to consider is you have all this cap space and you've got all these players on cheap deals. that's an opportunity where if you want to go and get a big ticket player that from a team that's in a cap crunch, something that's going to be attractive to them is a Scott Morrow, is a
Mm-hmm.
Jackson Blake. You know, you can only have so many wingers, and the Hurricanes have
A
Blake,
lot.
Jarvis, Svechnikov, Nadeau, you know, just
A lot of wingers.
Stankoven. You know, those guys are all talented players that somebody would like. So, yeah, I mean, I think we know that they do unorthodox things.
They do. Cory
They're not going
Lavalette.
to do,
Go ahead, real quick,
yeah.
because I have to let you go.
Okay.
That's it. All right. You're the best. I appreciate your time. I will bother you again soon, I'm sure. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's good. Let me get a couple 12-hour nights of sleep in here, and then we'll reset.
What are those? Cory Lavalette, at Cory Lav on Twitter, North State Journal, and The Athletic. Thanks, man. I appreciate your time.